The Basketball Hall of Fame 60 Days of Summer is your chance to see your favorite basketball stars live and in person. Check hoophall.com for a complete list of all these exciting appearances and plan your trip today.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
What a joy to have you with us.
My pleasure, and it's an honor and a privilege.
Thank you. So
Thank
tell
everybody.
me about Forest Park, Illinois.
Park Forest, Illinois. First of all, I want to thank God for blessing us to meet in a peaceful environment. It's only through His mercy and compassion we get a chance to do it. And for me, it's an honor and a privilege to get a chance to come and speak before people at any time. I was born in Chicago Heights, Illinois, actually.
Really?
Yes, probably 25 minutes outside the city of Chicago. Born June 27, 1960. So
Just had a birthday.
Yes, 55 actually. So I was a baby of the civil rights movement. My family was big in the movement. My grandfather taught sports, so I grew up in a sports family, but the most important thing for me during that period of time was your education. So
Sure.
my aunts were teachers, so I was taught how to read probably before I knew how to, play basketball for sure. But more importantly, it just taught me, and it gave me a grounded foundation of realizing the importance and the impact of being a student athlete and what it could do for your life.
Sure. What kind of neighborhood did you grow up in?
I grew up it was a mixed community. I grew up in the projects, however, no diss on the projects really, because for me, I wouldn't change my childhood. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, because we had great families compared to now, where most of the household were father figures. Where some of that has changed now in the projects. But all in all, I was blessed to have great mentors all the way through from the time, I was born, as far as basketball and sports was concerned, but also the educational mentors I had probably laid the foundation for me to be able to do the things that I was able to do in my career basketball-wise.
Absolutely. We'll come back to the education part in just a minute. Tell me about the sports that you played as a little boy. Did you just play basketball?
No,
play other sports?
Baseball was my first. In fact, my grandfather gave me a catcher's mitt, gave me the whole catcher's shebang when I was 6 years old, and told me the quickest way to the big show was to be a catcher.
Yeah.
So at that time, 1960s, I was behind the plate in 85-degree heat.
Oh my God.
And humidity in Chicago. So for me, probably I'm gonna say about 13 or 14, I started to improve a little more in basketball, and basketball was more action-packed compared to baseball. I'd sit behind the plate and be like, man, I can't wait till this is over. But basketball was one of those things I always enjoyed playing. I couldn't wait to get up and dribble the ball in the morning. So it was one of those things that came a little later in my life. As far as the improvements, baseball came almost naturally. I could play every position baseball, but I just didn't have the love I had for basketball for baseball. So
Well, maybe that's because you were a catcher.
yes, that had something to do with it. When I was playing
really-
in the outfield, I was cool.
Exactly. Catching is really hard, especially in that heat. Right. Were you a good baseball player?
Yeah, I loved it. In fact, I feel now, and looking back, when you look at the economics of sports, I felt like, man, you should play some more baseball. But now I got my cousins coming up and they're playing, so that's good.
There you go. So he's 13, 14 years old. You started to play basketball. Where did you play?
Where I grew up playing at a place called King Park in Chicago Heights. All the great players, all the high school phenoms who went on to college would come back. So you had to go through, it was 2 courts. You played on the ABA court, which was the lightweight court, and then you got to the NBA when you graduated. So for me, growing up and coming through the fires of playing against older guys, I wasn't one that went off to summer camps and basketball camps. All of my lessons were learned at the park and at the junior college where we played sometimes. But all in all, I think the community taught me how to play basketball more than anything.
I should ask him about baseball. Were you a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan?
I was a White Sox fan.
White Sox.
Yeah, because we felt like you had to almost drive to Milwaukee to get to Wrigley Field from where we were in the south suburbs.
Yeah. So you're playing ball in the park. You're learning the game.
Right.
Was it easy for you after all the baseball hand-eye coordination?
Well, when I look at sports, I think sports in general, just the nature of them are to have fun. So I had a lot of fun growing up playing it. So it was one of those things that you didn't really have to, it was a love for it already. So now you just had to put in your time, grind it out, and see how good you could be. And I think one of the most important lessons I had was from my uncle, who told me you're only going to get what you put into it. And he took me out there and wore me out. This was one of the first times we ever played one-on-one. And he beat my brains out, literally. And it was one of those things where he told me, when we were walking home, we get to the back porch and he say, look here, if you walk in this house and you got any tears, I ain't playing with you no more. And at that point, I toughened up and became a basketball player and not someone trying to play.
Sure. And did you try out for the middle school team, high school
team?
And
that was another trick he played on me too, is my uncle told me when I was in 5th grade, I trying out for the team, and I come home, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm trying out for the team. He's like, what do you mean trying out? You made the team. And we still had probably 4 or 5 days of cuts, but he told me at that time as a fifth grader, you could never be cut. And I'm like, but why are these other people getting cut?
Yeah.
But he's like, you never could be cut. So to me, mentally, I put in my mind that that would never happen to me. So it didn't.
So tell me about your high school team.
My freshman year, I played at Bloom High School, which is one of the mainstays for Chicago and Illinois basketball.
Right.
All my family played at Bloom. I wanted to play at Bloom as a varsity player, but my family moved from Chicago Heights to Park Forest my sophomore year. So I went to Rich East High School. My high school coach is Steve Fisher, who was the 5'5" coach for Michigan.
Right.
And now he's the head coach at San Diego State. So I've been blessed to have great coaching all the way through. The thing that I learned from Steve Fisher more than anything was we would walk in the gym at 2:30 every day, and he would close the door, boom, and it would seem like you was in prison. So for the next 3.5 hours, it would be like, man. But what it did, it prepared me literally for 10 or 12 years down the line when I had to have Don Nelson for head coach with Milwaukee, and that prepared me to be able to have 3.5 hours of totally concentrated basketball with no flaws, no lapses or anything. And I think at that young age, it taught me to be able to stay on the court for 3 hours and be focused.
Well, and beyond the 3 hours on the court, you were trying to balance, obviously, you're a young man.
Right.
School, education is very important in your family.
No doubt.
And, playing basketball on a fairly high level. How was that? Was it difficult for you? Easy with the backing of your family?
It was difficult at times. I think it probably got more difficult when I started dating or thinking I'm dating. You know what I mean? So probably like right between my junior and senior year, you get some newspaper clippings and the girls start to, and then you have to look and say, okay, what are your priorities? So for me, it became a thing that my love for the game had to overweigh everything, and that in order to get to play, I tell children all the time, nobody will ever see you play if your books aren't in order.
Right.
You might be able to play, you might be a, playground phenom with no grades, or you can be one of these cats and get an opportunity to come to the Hall of Fame. So
sure.
It's a matter of making sure that your priorities are in order and that you understand the impact of being a student athlete.
And you were a natural student? I mean, you had a family with your blessing, as you said, of a real strong family background in education.
My aunt taught me how to read. She's also my godmom. So to this day, to me, I always thank her for putting a fire under me where school never was a chore. I always loved to read. I love to write. I'm writing a book right now. Hint, hint. My book will be out in late August. I love to write, so it was never really a chore. I didn't really like some of the different courses. Some of them didn't seem to have. To me, when you study stuff like calculus and stuff, some of it has impact if you're a scientist, if you're doing brain surgery and stuff like that. But for me as a student athlete, I didn't see the impact of certain things. None of the children, don't get me wrong, STEM is important. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics is very important. But for me, I looked at it differently. I was more of a social cat. So my impact was talking to people, seeing where we can meet at a common ground. And my degree is in sociology. So
sociology.
That was always something for me as far as, talking to people and seeing personality.
When did you first start to realize for yourself, and realize, you said some early headlines in newspapers, whatever, that you were really pretty good at this game?
Well, probably about 14, I got my first clippings for my summer league game when I had like 25 points. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool to see your name in the paper. And then my grandfather called me real quick, and he said, grab the paper and start at the beginning of the paper. Go all the way through the paper and tell me what you see at the end. He said, you see sports at the end. So realize that everything before the sports page is impacting lives, and that you want to be in that part of the newspaper as opposed to the end. So for me, it was something that was eye-opening to let me know that, you know, sports has its place, and it doesn't take the primary, but it's secondary to your education and your mind.
What a remarkable family.
Teach. Appreciate it.
So what, from Chicago, from Illinois to Long Beach State,
Right.
how did that happen?
Well, Tex Winter, the great Tex Winter, he was recruiting me for Northwestern at the time during my high school years. He started recruiting me probably about my sophomore year, and even at that time, UCLA was rolling. UCLA, John Wooden and Kareem, they were doing their thing, and and like I said, my family was avid sports family, so everything was UCLA, John Wooden, UCLA, John Wooden. So for me, I wanted to go to UCLA from the time I knew about John Wooden, but that didn't pan out. Texas recruited me for Northwestern. Probably about March my senior year, he got the job at Long Beach State. So we were playing a city-suburban game, Chicago, the city versus the suburbs. Texas at the game, and I might have had 18 or 20 points, and he came down after the game, and he was like, yeah, Craig, I just got the job at Long Beach State. I want you to come and take a visit. I say, no, where do I sign? He's like, no, you got to take a visit first. But I knew right away I wanted to go someplace warm. I didn't want to, Chicago was dreadfully cold, and I had plenty of winters in it. And I was like, yeah, I want to go out west. And it was a good job. It was a good choice for me.
But that's a radical change, though, from Chicago to Long Beach State.
No doubt.
Culturally, how did you feel about that change? Was it an easy transition for you?
Oh, it was a very easy transition. You had great weather, pretty women. It was cool. It was cool, man. And for me, I was blessed to be able to have. I studied black studies and sociology. So for me, I had great tutelage in the classroom and studying the history of what I had learned as a little civil rights baby, to look back on it and study it and see what it meant and impacted my people. And then I was able to leave right from the classroom and go into the gym with a legend like Tex Winter, who taught me everything. He told us the first day of practice that anything that you've ever learned about basketball, I want you to forget it. And I'm going to give you the terms for every single thing in the game. And to this day, I'm ever thankful for that, because it gave me a certain understanding of the game that I don't think I would have got someplace else.
I don't know if you can tell even some of the young people here. Coach Winter is here in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
You'll see him above us there. I'm looking at this picture right now.
Yes, yes.
In fact, yeah. Tell us a little bit. Just can you tell them who Tex Winter was, what his impact was on the game?
Well, Tex learned the triangle from his college coach, Sam Hinkle, at USC. And a lot of people think Tex founded the triangle, but he's really the main innovator in the triangle as far as bringing the modern game to it. In fact, now I hear a lot of people saying the triangle is obsolete. But what's obsolete is fundamental training of players. That now, if you're the best dribbler on the team, you're going to shoot the most. If you're the biggest man on the team, you're going to set the most picks. Now, we don't even play interior basketball from a formal standpoint, but we're just playing whatever athlete has the best ball handling skills and scoring skills does that, and everybody else stand over there and figure out what to do after that goes wrong.
Yep.
To me, that's not how you play basketball. If you want to do that, Tex used to tell us, if you want to be an individual, go run track. If you want to be an individual, go swim.
Yeah.
So for me, the game is 5-on-5 with a 1-on-1 constant battle going on. That's what we're taught, that at any point in time, I'm going to have a one-on-one confrontation, but my one-on-one confrontation has to lend itself to what I'm doing in the team concept of things.
Oh, that's one of the joys of our game, obviously.
Absolutely.
Teamwork, it's
No
all
doubt.
about. And
No
we'll
doubt.
come to one of your teammates who was maybe one of the greatest individual players of all time.
No question.
But until he had the team around him, it was not having the success that he wanted to have.
No doubt.
So you're drafted. When did you first start to hear that you might get drafted into the NBA?
Well, my senior year, I was one of the top 3 guards on the West Coast, along with a guy by the name of Dwight Anderson and Zach Jones from San Diego State. Dwight was at USC, I was at Long Beach State. So Tex was the president of the National Coaches Association my senior year, which was good for me. So he got my name on the list for pre-draft candidates. And that was the first year they had the pre-draft. So I was an alternate, and being from Chicago, the pre-draft camp was in Chicago that year, so Tex told me as an alternate, I might as well go home. I hadn't graduated. So he's like, if you go home, you can go ahead and work out, and if anybody doesn't show up, you being in Chicago, they'll be more willing to bring you in without having to fly somebody in and wait. So he told me to wait by the phone, and the pre-draft started Friday morning, and it went 3 days. So Friday morning about 11 o'clock, I got a call from Tex, and he said Dwight Anderson, who was the top point guard on the West Coast, didn't show up for pre-draft camp because he thought he was going to be a lock. So I got a chance to go in, and I didn't miss a jump shot for 2 straight days.
Wow.
So from that standpoint, and my name wasn't on, it was cool. It was cool because nobody knew who I was. So I'm shooting jumpers and running down the sideline. And, who is that? Hit a jumper from the other side. Who is that? Yeah. Look in the stands, and you're seeing Red Auerbach, John Havlicek. You're seeing players and mentors that you've seen from afar, and now you're in front of them, and you're doing and showing your wares. And for me, it was one of those things where it was a defining moment that you knew that you were capable of playing on that level.
Absolutely.
At that time, so it was a cool thing, man.
So you're drafted by the San Diego Clippers, who had been the Buffalo Braves, and they'd moved to San Diego. And I looked back I was looking at the roster on that team. You played for Paul Silas, one of our favorites back in Boston here. A lot of talent on that team. You're Terry Cummings and Tom Chambers, my old friend Randy Smith, Bill Walton.
Swin Nader.
But didn't have a lot of success winning games. What was the story with that team?
The biggest, Bill is a cool cat. Bill is my boy. Bill Walton's my boy. But Bill at that time was being Bill. So my rookie year, Bill played on weekends. He went to law school during the week. So that's just telling you something. So Bill went to Stanford Law School from Monday through Thursday, and then he would come to San Diego and play with us. And he only played at home games, so he never went on the road. So it was very disruptive to the team. So a lot of guys didn't really like it, so it kind of played in the way that we performed. So we were 18 and I guess that season.
Yes.
The following season, we won 32 games, but we had a great core of players, man.
Yeah.
When you look at Terry Cummings, like you said, Terry Cummings and Tom Chambers and Bill Walton, so you have some Hall of Fame cats on that team. So we just weren't able to get together and gel the way that we needed to at that point in time.
If there was ever a better athlete than Randy Smith, I don't know who it was.
No, incredible.
Yeah, and so you went on to Milwaukee, and you really established yourself, it seemed to me, with the Bucks as a really solid player. And again, playing for Hall of Fame Don Nelson.
And I think the biggest thing in Milwaukee was our defensive stance. We had a defensive mindset that I felt, other than our championship teams with Chicago, those were teams I felt that we should have won with. But we couldn't beat Boston and Larry Bird and Parrish and them guys. But other than that, I think, the thing in Milwaukee was it was a great city to bring up a family. And I was a family man at that time, had my 2 young sons, so it was great because it wasn't too fast, but it wasn't too slow. It was only 90 minutes from my hometown in Chicago, so I could get on the highway and get back home now and then. But it was a great experience for me to get my feet wet in playoff basketball. For the first 2 years, I didn't get to playoffs. Now for the next 4 to 5 seasons, for the rest of my career, I would get to be a playoff player. And that's where your career is defined, I think, in the playoff. And like moments at All-Star Weekend are also defining moments. But I think it's all about winning, man. So when people ask me who's the best player ever, Bill Russell.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about defense on that team, Paul Pressey and Sidney Moncrief.
No question. And Sidney Moncrief, until I got to play with MJ, Sidney was the hardest worker I had ever played with. But when I played with MJ, that cat is incredible, man.
Well, let's talk about MJ and that team.
Yes.
I mean, it's obviously one of the historic greatest teams in the history of basketball.
doubt.
Did you know right away? You'd played against MJ. You knew who he was.
When we played against MJ in Milwaukee, and this is probably maybe his 2nd or 3rd year in the league. But we came to half court right before the game, and I told him, I said, man, if we ever play together, we're going to win championships together. And a year later, I got traded back to Chicago, and we were able to win. But just to be able, for me, I had to guard him every day in practice.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was good for me because it gave me a sense of who he was, but at the same time, I knew I had to compete at a level so that practice would be the way it needed to be. So I enjoyed it, man, and the competitive, I've never met anyone more competitive than MJ. We played 4 seasons together, and he never lost a suicide wind sprint.
I bet.
In 4 years. And I'm talking about Scotty, myself, BJ, Pax, all of us would try to cheat to even beat him, but he wasn't having it, man. So his drive as a player is special.
We're talking, of course, about the legendary Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls team. A couple of questions there first. Did you ever find yourself on the floor, as we as fans, kind of stepping back and going, oh, my God, when you'd see him do things that had never been done before, no one had ever seen before?
Yeah, and sometimes, even more so, one time I can recall me and BJ sitting on the bench, and we're sitting on the end of our chairs, and Michael gets a move, baseline. The defender is here. That's out of bounds. MJ is facing him here. And somehow he was able to go around, plant here, get here, and go up and dunk the basketball. So for me, some of the stuff that he would do would be almost superhuman from a standpoint that how can you make a pivot when he would turn so sharp, you would see his shoe almost come off. Literally, where he would turn the corner on the baseline and you would see this happen, and the next movement was a powerful thrust and up to dunk on somebody. That's incredible to me.
He obviously carried this in himself.
No doubt.
He shared this with his team.
Oh, no, and I think, you know, Scottie Pippen, Horace, they were probably 2 of his most prized pupils.
Yeah.
That he would show Scottie different things on, if I'm coming to the basket and I can get my forearm above a player's shoulder, now when that player jumps, that takes me up higher.
Yep.
That was little lessons that he would show Scottie how to do, that he actually perfected that craft of when somebody jumps, that's just going to take me up higher and I'm dunking over the top of you.
Well, we've all heard, you know, so many of the greats, Larry and Magic and certainly Michael, just wouldn't accept even from their, not only from themselves, but from their teammates, less than 100% effort. You felt that?
No doubt about it. And to some degree, Kobe's the same way.
Absolutely.
That, you know, you have a drive to want to win so badly that you're not going to allow your teammates to drop any lower. So there's been players that can't play with him, that don't have enough. Dwight Howard couldn't play with Kobe. We had problems with Dennis Hobson and MJ. You know, it's different players that just can't handle the heat, so they had to get out the kitchen, man.
Well, I want 2 questions about the coaching, because we're not often talked about as much in Chicago.
Right.
Obviously, the first one is the legendary Phil Jackson.
Right.
I'd love to know your impressions of what Phil brought to that very unique table.
Right.
And second, of course, the magic thing that happened in your life was the assistant coach who came in there turned out to be Tex Winter.
Right.
And they ran the triangle, and you were the perfect man to be in that circumstance.
And the thing about it was Phil and Tex were Doug Collins' assistants. So Doug could have allowed us to run the triangle, but Doug is more hands-on. And he wants to make his calls and like, which is cool. But for the complement of players that we had, the triangle was a perfect storm. So Phil understood. To me, the thing that separates Phil from other coaches is that he realizes what his staff is capable of and what his players are capable of. Mm-hmm. He allows you to be who you are and manages around that. So to me, I tell people he's the greatest manager of people that I've ever been around in as far as allowing you to find that balance as a group and never be too heavy-handed on forcing things or forcing the issue. So for me, I played for him and coached for him, and rarely have I heard him tell someone a bad shot. Rarely have I heard him tell someone you're not trying hard. Never ever heard him talk about somebody being soft, but he would always cover your back, especially in public for the most part, and that's appreciated as a player, and most times when that happens, you'll run through the wall for that coach, and that's what we were able to do. That I feel like when we won our first championship, it didn't matter who our coach was because we had been through those wars with Detroit. We had cried the year before when they beat us in Game 7, so it was one of those things where it was our time to win, and as a group, we understood that and went for it.
It must have been unbelievably sweet to beat the bad boys in particular. Yeah,
no doubt.
I know we want to make sure we have time for questions from you folks as well. Yes. So I'm going to just jump to one thing I've always wondered about. I remember the 1991 All-Star Game very well.
Yes, sir.
I was a young guy working for the NBA, and I was in charge of all the tickets in the room.
Okay.
And it was a very big night for me.
No doubt.
We were just gone to war. The Gulf War was happening.
Yes,
and
sir.
the three-point shootout started, and it was one of the most exciting things I'd ever seen, watching you make 19 shots in a row in the three-point shootout, which was extraordinary. Wow. What do you remember about that night?
The fun part about it is that Cliff Levingston, who's a teammate of mine, we call him Good News. And me and Cliff were tight throughout the season, so when it came time for All-Star, right around 2 weeks before All-Star weekend, out of nowhere, Cliff comes up, "Come on, Hodge, let's go." I'm like, "Where are we going, man? Practice over." "No, man, you getting ready to go out there and shoot some threes." "Dude, I ain't got to shoot them like that, man." "No, man, you going..." "Dude, I shoot threes. That's what I do, man. I ain't got to go out here and shoot them." "No, man, you got to get up 50 every day." "All right, brother, let's go." So he was on me for 2 weeks, and then when the competition came, it was that same energy, where we just went out on the court and it was just me and him, regardless to everybody, and he was talking so much garbage to all the other competitors. Mm-hmm. So we're sitting over there, and before the competition starts, we're sitting down there, I'm stretching, and he's in my ear, "Yeah, man, you gonna do this?" And I looked at him, I said, "Man, I'm getting ready to make every single shot." So as the ball is going through the net, I'm literally holding my follow-through, and I can hear the ball. So after that, I'll go back and regroup, hold it. So after I made the 19th one, the 20th shot felt better than the other 19 had. So that was the only shot that I shot, and as the ball was going towards the rim, I'm like, "Oh, that's good," and I started to move away. And as I dropped my hand, the ball spun out, blew my mind, so I had to regroup. But 19 in a row was awesome, but the cool part about it was every single shot was individual. I didn't think about the one before. It was just that shot was the most important shot. Likewise, I didn't hear anybody or anything around me until the ball came out of the basket.
So you weren't aware of the crowd?
Not at all. All I was hearing was choo, 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 choo. Then when it bounced out, it was like, "Whoa!" I'm like, "Whoa, oh man, get back to task."
I should tell you, the crowd was going crazy around him. If he didn't hear it, that's remarkable. When did you start really to know that you were a very special shooter, that skill, that unique skill?
Well, probably about junior year in high school. I had a high school game where my sophomore year in high school, I did a lot of my stuff off the dribble. I averaged about 25 points, dribbling the basketball, dribble, shoot, dribble, get to the rack, whatever. Right between the summer between my junior and senior year, between my sophomore and junior year, my uncle told me that he wanted me to spend the whole summer just catching and shooting. So he taught me a drill where I roll the ball, catch it, and shoot it. And what I found, it was easier for me to catch it out of a hop. So right then, that's when my hop started. As far as probably 95 to 96% of the shots I shot in the NBA, I shot out of a 2-foot jump stop, whether it's off the dribble, off of a movement, or on catch. And that's when I found it, as between my sophomore and junior year. And then my junior year, I went on to have games where I might have 26 points and it'd be 13 for 13, and the ball never touched the floor one time. So I was just flat out catch and shoot, catch and shoot, catch and shoot. And that's where I honed that skill. So at that point, and I think the biggest part of being a decent shooter is realizing that you can miss, and that you want to be so focused on not missing that becomes the primary in your mind. So when I'm working with children about shooting basketball, I tell them, don't concentrate on your misses. So many times I see somebody shoot, man. I'm saying, correct it. Know the reason your ball goes into the basket. Now when it doesn't go in, correct the point at which you made that mistake.
If anyone has a question for Mr. Hodges, please raise your hand. Oh, you got some folks over here already. Come on over and ask a question. Hello there.
Hello.
And what is your name, please, and what's your question?
My name is Lanisha, and I'm from Boston. I just wanted to find out, being a shooting guard back in the 90s, since the game has changed tremendously, what advice would you give a rookie shooting guard coming into the NBA now?
Okay. Appreciate your question. I think one of the biggest things between now and when we played was the physicality. The physicality of a two-guard in the 80s and 90s is different than now. I think now the biggest thing I would tell you is footwork, knowing how to use your feet, and whether you're coming off of picks or whether you stand still or whatever. Secondly would be making sure that your ball is at the top. It's the same place at the bottom, meaning that when I come off the dribble, my wrist is in a cocked position. So my ball is moving from here to here, all in one piece. Likewise, if I'm waiting on a pass, my wrist is in cocked position. So this has to be in this position before I do anything. So first, I see my target. All right, so if I'm talking to shooters, I'm saying, what are we looking at? When I'm looking at the target, I'm looking at 6 inches above that rim line. All right, anything below that going to be flat. So I'm thinking 2 inches inside of the rim, 6 inches up. 2 inches inside, 6 inches up. So I know I'm not going to be short. Likewise, it's eyes, foundation, 3 parts of your shot. Foundation, form, follow through. 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 Basketball is a rhythmic situation. The rhythm of shooting is just that. So I'm telling children, just like I'm saying that, I'm shooting jumpers in my mind, y'all. Now, y'all might not be, but I'm shooting jumpers. So it's foundation, form, follow through. By the time I say follow through, my ball is coming through the net. So stuff like that. I hope that helped.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Next question, please. Hello there. And what is your name and what is your question?
Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Okay.
And you talked a little bit about how the game has changed since you played into now. You said when you played it was more of, you thought it was more of a team, at least with running the triangle and everything. Yes. And now often it's just get the ball to the best, most athletic player, he'll take it, and everybody else kind of role play around him, do what they do. Why do you think the game has changed in that way, and what do you think could happen or should happen to change it back to where it's more of a team game, I guess?
Got you. One of the things that when I look at the timeline that I look at is when we were playing in the 80s and 90s, there's a physicality to it, and everybody could shoot, man. If you go back to the biggest of the bigs, they could all shoot a 15-foot jump shot. They could make free throws. One of the problems we have now is that the game is so commercial. Everything is about branding. Everything is about being an individual. So it lends itself to individuality. So it lends itself to, if I got one cat that can score 100 points, I'm gonna get him to score 100 points. Rest of y'all make enough change, y'all happy, be cool with it. But I think that now it's sending a critical message to young people. So we have a young guy that was part of the Jackie Robinson Little League in Chicago, 13-year-old kid. He already had his own brand. So the branding is lending itself to some of the downers of the game to me, because everybody don't need to have a brand, because your game ain't like that. You know what I'm saying? That it's to a point where now it's almost becoming too cliche. So my thing is, we have to teach the fundamentals of the game to this next generation, so that maybe we'll start to see a cycle going back the other way where team, and I think too, when we came up, coaches were authoritarians like your parents. It's not that way anymore. The game is a player's game now, where the players can have coaches fired. So it's a different mindset from the way guys go about doing it.